if I told you that a single bridge, largely unnoticed by most Americans, quietly carries billions of dollars through the US economy every day? Auto parts moving from Detroit to Tennessee, food shipments traveling to Florida, even the package that shows up at your door 2 days after you click buy. This is the Brent Spence Bridge, a critical artery connecting Cincinnati, Ohio and Covington, Kentucky. And right now, it's become one of the biggest bottlenecks in America's supply chain. What was originally designed for about 80,000 vehicles per day now carries closer to 160,000. Freight trucks mix with local commuters, lanes squeeze together without emergency shoulders, and a single accident can ripple across multiple states. For decades, leaders in Ohio and Kentucky have known the problem needed a solution. But like many major infrastructure projects in the United States, the challenge wasn't just engineering. It was funding, politics, and figuring out who should pay for a project that affects an entire region. Now, after years of stalled proposals, the Brent Spence Bridge corridor project is finally moving forward. A massive reconstruction effort that includes a brand new companion bridge, a redesigned highway corridor, and a plan to keep traffic moving while the entire system is rebuilt. So today we're breaking down why this corridor became one of the most important bottlenecks in American infrastructure, and how the $3.6 billion solution is finally fixing it. And along the way, we'll ask a question that's becoming more common across the country. When infrastructure gets this important, who should really be responsible for paying to fix it? To understand why this project became so important, you have to look at what the Brent Spence Bridge was originally built to handle. When the bridge opened in 1963, it was considered a major piece of modern infrastructure. At the time, engineers designed it to carry roughly 80,000 vehicles per day across the Ohio River, using 3 lanes in each direction and comfortable safety shoulders. But the United States that the bridge was built for doesn't really exist anymore. Over the decades, the Midwest evolved into one of the largest logistics and manufacturing hubs in the world. Freight moving between Detroit, Chicago, Louisville, Nashville, and Atlanta began flowing directly through this corridor because Interstate 71 and Interstate 75 converge right here at the river crossing. As trucking expanded and supply chains became more interconnected, traffic on the Brent Spence Bridge kept growing. Today, the corridor carries closer to 160,000 vehicles every day, nearly double what the structure was originally designed to handle. And that's where the real problem started. To squeeze more capacity out of the bridge, engineers made a difficult decision decades ago. They removed the emergency shoulders and added an extra lane in each direction. That move temporarily increased throughput, but it also removed the safety margin that highways normally rely on. Now, imagine what happens when a vehicle breaks down. There's nowhere to pull over. A stalled car or truck sits directly in a live lane of traffic. One mechanical issue can instantly turn into a multi-mile backup stretching across the river and deep into both states. For local drivers, it means unpredictable commutes and frequent congestion. For freight companies, it means delays that ripple through supply chains across the Midwest and Southeast. And when delays stack up here, the economic impact can ripple far beyond the Ohio River, affecting manufacturing schedules, shipping costs, and even the price of goods consumers see on store shelves. So here's something to think about for a moment. When a single piece of infrastructure becomes this critical to the movement of goods across the country, should it still be treated like a local traffic problem, or does it become something much bigger? After decades of congestion, safety concerns, and stalled proposals, the solution that finally moved forward is not just a bridge replacement, it's a full corridor redesign. The Brent Spence Bridge Corridor project is a $3.6 billion reconstruction of roughly 8 miles of interstate, stretching across the Ohio River between Kentucky and Ohio. Instead of simply widening the existing structure, engineers chose a completely different strategy. They split the system in 2. The centerpiece of the plan is a brand new companion bridge that will sit just west of the current Brent Spence Bridge. This new structure will carry the long-distance interstate traffic, especially the heavy freight trucks moving through the region on I-71 and I-75. The existing Brent Spence Bridge, meanwhile, isn't being demolished, it's being rebuilt and repurposed. Once the new bridge opens, the original structure will be redesigned primarily for local traffic moving between Cincinnati and northern Kentucky. The lanes will be reduced back to 3 in each direction, and for the first time in decades, full emergency shoulders will return. That change alone dramatically improves safety, but the bridges themselves are only part of the project. On both sides of the Ohio River, the surrounding highway systems is being redesigned to fix the real source of many crashes and slowdowns, merging conflicts. Right now, local drivers entering and exiting the interstate are forced to weave through long-distance freight traffic traveling at highway speeds. To solve this, engineers are introducing something called collector-distributor lanes. Think of them as parallel mini-highways that run alongside the main interstate. Local drivers can enter and exit these lanes without crossing directly in front of semi-trucks moving through the corridor. In theory, that separation allows freight to move continuously, while local traffic handles exits and short trips without creating dangerous merge points. Supporters also argue that smoother traffic flow could help reduce emissions from idling trucks and stop-and-go congestion, addressing some of the environmental concerns that often accompany major highway infrastructure projects. Ohio and Kentucky both knew the corridor needed to be rebuilt, but neither state wanted to carry the full cost alone. Early proposals repeatedly collapsed over one particularly controversial idea: tolls. Many plans suggested charging drivers to cross the bridge in order to pay for construction. Local communities pushed back hard, arguing that tolls would shift the financial burden onto everyday commuters who rely on the crossing for work and daily travel. The project remained stuck in political limbo for years. The breakthrough finally came through federal funding. The bipartisan infrastructure law unlocked a massive federal investment into the project, including more than $1 billion in support that helped close the federal gap between the two states. With federal money on the table, Ohio and Kentucky reached an agreement to split the remaining costs. And perhaps most importantly for local residents, the final funding structure removed tolls from the plan entirely. But that raises an interesting question. When a project like this affects national freight routes, interstate commerce, and supply chains across multiple states, should it be funded primarily by local taxpayers, by the federal government, or by the drivers who use it every day? Interstate 71 and 75 are two of the most important freight highways in the United States, and they converge directly at this river crossing. Shutting the bridge down during construction simply isn't an option. So, engineers are facing one of the hardest challenges in modern infrastructure: rebuilding a critical transportation artery while the traffic never stops flowing. The first phase focuses on constructing the new companion bridge alongside the existing Brent Spence structure. Because the new crossing will sit tightly west of the current bridge, crews can begin building foundations, towers, and support structures without immediately disrupting the current traffic lanes. This is where the design of the new bridge becomes important. Engineers selected a cable-stayed structure, a design that uses tall pylons with fan-like cables supporting the roadway. That allows the bridge to span long distances across the Ohio River without placing support piers directly in the middle of the navigation channel, which is critical for keeping river traffic moving. But the bridge itself is only part of the construction puzzle. On both sides of the river, workers must completely reconfigure interchanges, ramps, and highway approaches across nearly 8 miles of roadway. That means relocating lanes, building new flyovers, and gradually shifting traffic onto temporary alignments while permanent structures are constructed. Crews will build sections of a new highway beside the existing lanes, shift traffic onto them, and then rebuild the original roadway. It's a slow, carefully staged process that can take years to complete. At the same time, construction is happening in a dense urban environment. The corridor cuts directly through developed neighborhoods in both Cincinnati and Covington. That means engineers must coordinate around existing buildings, rail lines, local streets, and utilities that have been in place for decades. And all of this work takes place just feet away from vehicles moving at highway speeds. For local residents, construction will likely mean temporary lane shifts, noise, and years of large-scale activity along the riverfront. But it also brings economic activity, construction jobs, and long-term improvement to a corridor that has shaped daily life in the region for generations. And that brings up an interesting point for the audience. Major infrastructure upgrades like this often promise national economic benefits and improved freight movement. But for the communities living next to the construction zone, the experience can look very different. The Brent Spence Bridge isn't just another highway structure, it's a lifeline for one of the most important freight corridors in the United States, connecting the Midwest manufacturing base with the rapidly growing Southeast. When traffic slows here, the ripple effects reach factories, grocery stores, and supply chains across the country, Projects like this raise a bigger question about the future of American infrastructure. When critical corridors reach their breaking point, what role should the federal government play in helping states fund the upgrades needed to keep the economy moving? Let us know what you think in the comments and take our quiz to see how much you know about the infrastructure that shapes our lives. And if you enjoy deep dives into the infrastructure projects shaping cities, economies, and communities, make sure to subscribe for more.